What if I told you that surviving even a single day in the ancient city of Pompeii might be the toughest challenge of your life? Before we step into this haunting journey together, take just a few seconds to hit the like button. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel if you are truly ready to dive deep into history's most chilling moments. Now let us begin. Close your eyes and imagine the scene. The year is 79 AD. You are walking through the stone gates of Pompeii, the pride of the Roman Empire, a city glittering with wealth and culture, built on fertile volcanic soil that gave grapes their sweetness and olives their rich flavor. The sun beats down on the tiled roofs. Merchants are shouting out prices in Latin you barely understand, and somewhere in the distance you hear the rhythmic clang of blacksmiths shaping iron. At first, everything feels alive, thriving, full of color. But you do not know that you have stepped into a trap. Let us wander into the market. Fresh figs are piled high, fish are laid out on stone slabs, and bakers carry loaves of bread still steaming from clay ovens. But look closer, the fish smell of decay. The bread is sometimes mixed with ash and grit, and the wine, oh, it is sweet but laced with lead. Because Roman pipes and cups often carried poison without anyone realizing. If you take a sip, congratulations. You just signed yourself up for slow organ failure. Don't worry though, it will only take a few years. Small consolation, right? As you keep walking, you pass grand villas decorated with frescoes of gods and nymphs, some so scandalous they would make modern Hollywood blush. Roman elites loved luxury, and Pompeii was their playground. There were bathhouses where people gathered not just to clean but to gossip, flirt, and scheme. Imagine steam rising, perfumed oils rubbed into skin, and politicians whispering about power plays in corners. You might think, this does not sound too bad, I could enjoy this, but here's the catch: the water is drawn from aqueducts that carry toxic minerals. And the steam rooms, perfect breeding grounds for disease. You are soaking in germs, not just hot water. Now, maybe you decide to explore the streets. The cobblestones are uneven, and ruts from chariot wheels nearly trip you. Above your head, balconies drip with waste, because not everyone was careful where they dumped their chamber pots. Yes, sometimes you would be walking and suddenly, splash, congratulations, you have just been baptized by ancient Roman hygiene. You think modern New York has problems, Pompeii says hold my wine. Still, there is a charm you can't deny. Children chase each other with wooden toys, gladiators train in the amphitheater, and artists paint scenes of myth and daily life. You can almost forget the unease, until you notice small tremors under your feet. The locals laugh it off, they are used to earthquakes here. The gods are stirring, they say with a shrug. But you, knowing what will happen, feel a chill, because those little shakes are whispers of a giant waking up. The irony is cruel. The very volcano that made Pompeii rich, fertilizing its soil and blessing its vineyards, is the same monster preparing to wipe it off the map. You might be sitting at a tavern, sipping watered-down wine, watching a dice game, and thinking life here is pretty good. Yet every bite of food, every breath of air, and every tremor beneath your sandals is a reminder. This city is not safe. You do not belong here. You are a guest at a feast that is about to end in fire. So here's the question: you have just arrived, dazzled by the sights and smells of Pompeii. How long would it take you to realize that survival here is not about living, but about escaping a destiny written in ash? You step further into Pompeii, and at first glance, it feels like paradise. The streets are buzzing with life, mosaics sparkle under the sun, and fountains trickle cool water into marble basins. It is hard not to be impressed. You are standing inside what many considered the crown jewel of Roman provincial cities. This was not some backwater village. It was a thriving hub of trade, culture, and entertainment. People traveled from miles away to experience the delights of Pompeii, nestled comfortably at the base of Mount Vesuvius. What could possibly go wrong? Let us take a stroll through the Forum, the beating heart of the city. Picture rows of colonnades, merchants haggling over fabrics, and statues of emperors staring down with stern authority. To your left, a temple rises, smoke curling from incense sticks offered to Jupiter. To your right, you see graffiti scratched into the walls. messages about gladiator fights, lovers declaring their passion, even crude jokes that remind you people have not changed much in 2,000 years. You might laugh, thinking social media trolls existed even back then. They just used stone walls instead of comment sections. But beneath the glamour, there are cracks. Literally, the streets are carved from volcanic stone, but they are uneven and dangerous. The fountains, as beautiful as they seem, often delivered contaminated water. And the bustling crowd, well, in a world without modern medicine, every cough could mean tuberculosis. And every small cut could turn into a fatal infection. You are surrounded by beauty, but it is beauty with teeth. Now imagine stepping into the amphitheater. The cheers of the crowd rumble like thunder as gladiators clash in the sand. Shields crash, blades gleam, and the air smells of sweat and blood. To the Romans, this was entertainment. To you, it is a reminder that violence was woven into daily life. One wrong word, one drunken insult at a tavern, and you might find yourself tossed into the arena. And let us be honest, unless you have secretly been training with swords your whole life, you would not last very long. Not even against the half-blind gladiator nicknamed One-Eyed Gaius. Pompeii was also a city of indulgence. Wine flowed freely, brothels operated openly, and feasts could last all night. In a villa, you might be served peacock tongues, dormice stuffed with honey, or fish seasoned with garum, a fermented sauce so pungent it could knock out a modern foodie in one whiff. You would smile politely, but inside you would be wondering if your stomach could survive the night. Spoiler, probably not. But the strangest part, the people of Pompeii thought they were safe. They believed their gods would protect them, that their empire was eternal, and that Vesuvius was just a mountain, nothing more. They had no concept of volcanoes as we do today. If you mentioned magma, tectonic plates, or pyroclastic surges, they would look at you as if you had been struck by Bacchus's wine cup. To them, the occasional tremors were quirks of nature, not warnings of annihilation. As you wander the streets, a thought nags at you. Everyone here seems so confident, so rooted in their daily lives. Yet you, with your modern knowledge, know what is coming. It is like watching a movie where you have already seen the ending, except you are not in the audience. You are inside the story, and the countdown has already begun. So, take another look around this dazzling Roman jewel. The frescoes, the laughter, the marble temples, they are all beautiful, but they are all temporary. The question is, if you had one day here, would you spend it enjoying the luxuries of empire, or desperately searching for a way out before the sky itself turns against you? When you wake up in Pompeii, the first thing you notice is not the sunrise, it is the noise. The city hums from the moment dawn cracks over Mount Vesuvius. Roosters crow, carts rattle on stone streets, and neighbors shout greetings or insults across balconies. Welcome to your first full day in Pompeii. And trust me, you won't get through it without a few surprises. Let us start with breakfast. Forget bacon and eggs. A typical Pompeian morning might involve bread dipped in wine, olives, or maybe some cheese if you are lucky. Sounds simple enough, right? But remember, the bread often contained bits of grit from the millstones, which means you will be chewing sand with your meal. And that wine, watered down and possibly laced with lead from the pipes. Congratulations! You have just had the most toxic breakfast of your life.
Bon appétit, Roman style.
After breakfast, you might step into the bustling streets. Children run between the legs of donkeys, merchants hawk their goods, and you have to dodge puddles that you hope are just water. Hint, they are not always water. Sanitation was not exactly top tier here. You quickly learn that walking through Pompeii means keeping your eyes not only on the beautiful mosaics at your feet, but also on what might come raining down from above. A chamber pot emptied from a window is more dangerous than any gladiator sword. Now, perhaps you head toward the baths. Everyone in Pompeii loved the public baths. It is where business deals were struck, gossip flowed faster than the hot water, and friendships were cemented in steam. But step carefully, the pools are full of bacteria, and the steam rooms are incubators for every illness imaginable. You soak for too long, you might leave with more than just soft skin. You might leave with pneumonia. But hey, at least you will smell nice on the way to your funeral. In the afternoon, the forum comes alive. You hear the voices of politicians promising prosperity, merchants yelling prices, and priests chanting prayers to the gods. The energy is infectious. You can almost believe this city will last forever. You watch as women haggle over fabrics, children steal fruit when the stall owners are not looking, and jugglers toss flaming sticks into the air to entertain the crowd. It is vibrant, chaotic, and strangely modern. For a moment, you might forget you are in danger. For a moment, you think you could live here. But then your stomach grumbles. Time for lunch. Romans were foodies in their own way. You might get lentils, barley stew, or some fish drenched in garum. And that garum, that fermented fish sauce, is the ketchup of ancient Rome. They poured it on everything. But the smell, imagine rotten anchovies soaked in vinegar for months. Delicious, right? Don't wrinkle your nose too much. Locals will think you are insulting their favorite dish. Try to smile as you choke it down, pretending it is gourmet. Evening comes, and with it, entertainment. You might attend a gladiator match, watch actors perform in the theater, or join a friend at a banquet. At the banquet, the wine flows freely, music plays, and people lounge on couches as slaves bring dish after dish. You think you are living the high life, until you notice the lead glazed cups in your hand and the slightly suspicious meat on your plate. The truth is, you are not eating dinner. You are playing roulette with food poisoning. By nightfall, Pompeii feels alive with laughter, torches flickering in the streets, and lovers slipping away into the shadows. It feels eternal. But if you pause, if you really listen, you might hear the faint rumble under your feet, like the heartbeat of a giant. The people here ignore it. To them, it is nothing. To you, it is a reminder. Every laugh, every meal, every step is happening on borrowed time. So, if this is just one day in Pompeii, filled with grit in your bread, toxins in your wine, germs in your bath, and danger at every corner, do you still think you could survive? Or would you already be planning your escape, hoping to outrun the fate written in ash? You have survived a morning in Pompeii, and maybe, just maybe, you are starting to feel comfortable. The streets are lively, the food is strange but filling, and the baths. Well, let us not talk about what the baths are doing to your immune system. But here's the thing, comfort in Pompeii is an illusion. Because the very luxuries that make this city so appealing are the same things quietly plotting your downfall. Take the villas of the rich. The walls are painted with vivid frescoes, gods feasting, lovers embracing, scenes of hunting and conquest. You would think you are walking through an art gallery. But behind those walls, the wealthy are indulging in habits that would horrify your doctor. Lead makeup to whiten the skin, wine sweetened with lead acetate. Even the aqueducts that bring water into these palaces are lined with lead pipes. You can almost hear your liver crying out, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then there is the obsession with luxury foods. At a noble's banquet, you might be served dishes that sound exotic even today. Flamingo tongues, roasted peacocks, dormice rolled in honey and poppy seeds. It looks impressive, but let us be honest, you are gambling with your digestive system. Meat often sat out for hours before being eaten, and refrigeration was not a thing. One bad oyster, and congratulations, you have just invented the ancient Roman version of food poisoning. And what about the garum factories? The pungent smell of fermenting fish sauce drifts through entire neighborhoods. Locals love it, but for you, it is like living inside a rotting seafood dumpster. Worse, the factories attracted flies, rats, and disease. Imagine paying a fortune for a villa with a view of the sea, only to find out it is also downwind from the city's version of a fish sauce plant. Not exactly prime real estate. Pompeii also had brothels, plenty of them. They were open, busy, and decorated with frescoes that left nothing to the imagination. You might be curious enough to peek inside, but be careful. In a world without antibiotics, diseases spread fast. Let us just say that a souvenir from one of these places could haunt you for the rest of your very short life. And no, WebMD won't help you here. Even the entertainment carried risks. The amphitheater could seat thousands, but crowds this big meant one thing: chaos. Drunken brawls, riots, and accidents were common. In fact, one famous riot between Pompeians and a neighboring town turned so violent that the Roman Senate banned gladiator games here for 10 years. Imagine flying all the way to Vegas, only to find out the casinos are closed because the last poker game ended in a riot. And yet, the people of Pompeii adored their luxuries. They believed these pleasures defined their civilization, proof that they were superior to the so-called barbarians beyond the empire's borders. To them, lead-lined pipes were not deadly, they were modern. Fish sauce factories were not disgusting, they were a mark of abundance. Disease-ridden baths were not dangerous, they were community hubs. Everything that spelled danger to you was a sign of prosperity to them. So here's the uncomfortable truth. If you tried to avoid every danger hidden in Pompeii's luxuries, you would also be cutting yourself off from its very essence. No wine, no feasts, no baths, no entertainment, no indulgence. What is left, you would be alive, sure, but you would also be miserable, an outsider in a city that lived to indulge. Which leaves you with a choice. Do you dive headfirst into the luxuries of Pompeii, knowing they will slowly kill you, or do you stand apart, trying to survive while everyone else laughs, eats, and drinks themselves into oblivion? Either way, survival here does not look much like living. From anywhere in Pompeii, you can look up and see it, the mountain. Tall, looming, deceptively calm, Mount Vesuvius watches over the city like a silent guardian. To the people here, it is just part of the landscape, a familiar backdrop to their lives. Grapevines crawl along its fertile slopes, producing wine so rich that Roman poets wrote verses about it. Farmers bless it for the harvest, children climb its lower trails, and nobody seems afraid. To them, Vesuvius is a friend. To you, it is a sleeping giant with fire in its lungs. Here's the thing, the Romans did not even have a word for volcano. The very concept of molten earth exploding into the sky was unimaginable. When they felt tremors beneath their feet, they chalked it up to the gods stirring, a reminder that divine power was never far. Priests assured them that sacrifices and prayers kept the balance. To question that would be to question the gods themselves, and no one dared to do that. So life continued. Wine poured, bread baked, festivals thrived, all under the shadow of a ticking time bomb. Now, with modern knowledge, you see the signs differently. Vesuvius is not just a mountain, it is part of the Campanian volcanic arc, fueled by the collision of tectonic plates. The soil that gave Pompeii its bounty was enriched by centuries of eruptions. To scientists today, the clues are obvious: fumaroles venting gas, tremors rumbling like a restless stomach, changes in water sources. But to a Pompeian, just quirks of nature, something to laugh off before heading to the tavern for another round of dice. The irony is that Pompeii celebrated the very gifts that sealed its fate. The fertile fields, the lush vineyards, the abundance of olives, all born of volcanic ash. Every sip of wine carried the taste of destruction. Every loaf of bread baked from volcanic soil carried the fingerprints of catastrophe. But they did not see it that way. To them, Vesuvius was generous, not dangerous. Stories and myths surrounded the mountain. Some said Vulcan, the god of fire, kept his forge beneath it, hammering weapons for Mars, the god of war. Others whispered that giants were trapped inside, their movements shaking the earth. Imagine living here, raising your children, and teaching them that the rumble beneath their feet was simply the sound of gods at work. Would you sleep soundly, or would you lie awake, wondering when those gods might turn their gaze toward you? Let us pause for a moment. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of the city, looking up at the mountain. The sun dips low, painting the slopes in gold. The vineyards glowing like rivers of fire. You take a deep breath, and the air feels heavy. There is no smoke yet, no ash, no warning, just silence. But you know what is coming. You know this mountain is not asleep forever. And suddenly, you realize the scariest part is not the eruption itself. It is the waiting, the not knowing when the sky will open and bury everything in fire. So here's the haunting thought. Would you be able to enjoy life in Pompeii, knowing what you know now, or would every glass of wine, every cheerful festival, every tremor in the night feel like the countdown to a disaster no one around you believes in? Let us play a game of imagination. You wake up in Pompeii not as a tourist from the future, but as a resident. a full participant in the daily rhythm of this ancient city. The first light of dawn filters through wooden shutters, and the air smells faintly of smoke from last night's cooking fires. You rub your eyes, rise from a bed stuffed with straw, and stretch as the sound of carts creaking outside reminds you the city is already alive. Your first stop is the market. The forum is crowded with vendors shouting prices, slaves carrying baskets, and animals bleating nervously as they are dragged toward the butchers. You hold a few bronze coins in your hand, debating what to buy. Fresh figs, expensive. Bread, cheap, but gritty from stone-ground flour. Fish, risky, especially if it has been lying in the sun too long. You choose bread and olives, but you already know this meal will fill your stomach, not protect your health. A doctor today would shake their head, muttering something about heavy metals and parasites. From there, you head toward the baths. The bathhouse is massive, echoing with laughter, gossip, and splashing. You undress in the apoditerium, store your belongings, and step into the tepidarium, a warm room designed to ease you into the experience. The air is thick with steam, perfumed with oils. For a moment, it feels luxurious. But then you notice the grime floating in the water, the coughing man beside you, and you remember this is not a spa. It is a petri dish. Still, it is socially expected. If you refuse to bathe, people will whisper that you are uncivilized. So you smile, you dip in, and you pretend not to notice the germs partying around you. In the afternoon, you wander to the amphitheater. The crowd roars as gladiators clash, their swords sparking under the sun. Vendors pass around roasted nuts, cheap wine, and bread dipped in garum. You take a sip of wine, and your tongue detects the metallic tang of lead, but no one else complains. The man next to you is cheering so loudly you wonder if he even notices what he is drinking. The fight ends in blood. The victor raises his arms, and the crowd explodes in joy. For them, this is entertainment. For you, it is a reminder that life here is brutal and cheap. Evening arrives, and with it, the chance to attend a banquet at a wealthy friend's villa. The triclinium, the dining room, is laid out with couches, torches flickering against painted walls, and musicians plucking lyres in the corner. Slaves bring dish after dish, peacock, pork, dormice stuffed with honey, fish drenched in garum. The wine flows like water. Conversation ranges from politics to gossip about who is cheating on whom. You try to enjoy yourself, but the food tastes odd. The cups are glazed with lead, and you can't shake the sense that each bite is a gamble. Then comes the after-dinner entertainment. A poet recites verses about love and war. An actor performs a bawdy skit that makes the guests roar with laughter. Someone suggests another round of dice, and you are dragged into a game you barely understand. You lose a coin or two, but no one cares. It is all part of the atmosphere. By nightfall, you walk home under torchlight, the streets alive with shadows and whispers. Lovers slip away into alleys. Dogs bark in the distance. Somewhere, a drunk man is singing loudly off-key. The city feels eternal, vibrant, unstoppable. But then, a faint tremor ripples under your feet. Just for a moment, no one else reacts, but you freeze. You know what it means. They do not. And that is the paradox of living in Pompeii. To survive here, you can't just eat, drink, bathe, and laugh. You have to ignore the dangers staring you in the face. You have to believe the giant mountain above you is harmless. But you know the truth. And that knowledge makes every step feel like a countdown. So tell me, if you lived a single full day like this, immersed in the luxuries, the dirt, the joy, and the danger, would you be tempted to stay another? Or would you already be packing your things, looking for the fastest horse out of town before the giant wakes up? It begins quietly. You are walking through the streets of Pompeii one afternoon when you feel it, a faint vibration under your sandals. It is so subtle you almost think you imagined it. A jug rattles on a merchant's stall, a dog whines, and then it is gone. You look around, expecting panic, but the locals barely notice. An old man shrugs and mutters. The gods are stirring again. Children keep playing. Vendors keep shouting, and life continues as though nothing happened. But you know better. That was no playful stir from the gods. It was the earth itself shifting. A warning whispered through stone, and it won't be the last. Over the next few days, the signs pile up. Water in wells grows cloudy, tasting of minerals. Birds vanish from the skies, fleeing before humans even sense the danger. Fish float dead along the shoreline, their silver bodies bobbing in the sun. You mention it to a neighbor, but he just laughs, saying, perhaps Neptune is angry. We will sacrifice a goat. That should do it. To you, these are red flags. To them, it is background noise. One evening, as you are eating bread and olives, the ground shakes harder. Plates clatter, oil lamps swing, and for a moment you wonder if the roof will collapse. A woman screams, clutching her child. But then, as quickly as it came, the tremor stops. People sigh in relief, make the sign to ward off evil, and return to dinner.
No evacuation, no preparation, no urgência.
Imagine living in a world where earthquakes are just part of the scenery. Here's the science: Vesuvius is restless. Magma deep within the earth is forcing its way upward, fracturing rock, releasing gases. Modern volcanologists would see the pattern immediately. They would measure seismic activity, track gas emissions, and warn everyone to leave. But this is 79 AD. The people of Pompeii have no instruments, no knowledge, no reason to believe the mountain is anything but solid. They are sitting on a ticking bomb, and the ticking is getting louder. Let us shift perspective. Pretend you are a resident here, but with your modern awareness. What would you do? Would you pack your belongings, grab a donkey, and flee toward the coast, or would you hesitate, trapped by the same illusions as everyone else? Because here's the catch. Leaving means abandoning your home, your livelihood, and everything you know. Most would not take that risk. Even today, people living near volcanoes sometimes stay until it is too late. Comfort is powerful. Denial is stronger. Meanwhile, the superstitions grow. Priests burn incense and call for sacrifices, blaming Neptune, Jupiter, even Pluto, god of the underworld. They tell the crowds the gods demand respect, not fear. You watch the rituals, the smoke curling toward the mountain, and you can't help but wonder, are the gods listening, or is the earth itself laughing? By night, the city feels uneasy. Dogs bark at nothing. Livestock grow restless. The air smells faintly of sulfur, though most dismiss it as the stench from garum factories. You lie awake, heart pounding, as tremors rattle the wooden shutters. Each one feels like a countdown, each one a drumbeat of the giant stirring in his sleep. And yet, in the morning, the markets open as usual. Bread bakes, wine pours, laughter fills the air. Pompeii carries on, blind to its doom. So the question is, if you were there, noticing the strange water, the vanishing birds, the trembling earth, would you trust your instincts and run? Or would you, like the people of Pompeii, convince yourself it was nothing and stay for a tomorrow that will never come? It happens suddenly, with no warning that anyone in Pompeii understands. The day begins like any other, merchants shouting in the forum, bakers sliding loaves from hot ovens, children chasing each other through narrow alleys. Then, around midday, the mountain groans. A deep, thunderous roar echoes across the sky, rolling like an angry drumbeat. People stop in their tracks, eyes widening, as a column of dark smoke bursts from the peak of Vesuvius and climbs higher and higher into the heavens. First, many cheer. They think it is a spectacular sign from the gods, a message written in smoke. Priests lift their hands, chanting to Jupiter, convinced they are witnessing a divine miracle. But your stomach twists because you know this is no miracle, it is the beginning of the end. The column of ash rises miles into the air, blackening the midday sun. Ash begins to fall, lightly at first, like gray snow. Children giggle, catching flakes on their tongues, not realizing they are swallowing poison. The air grows heavy, choking. You cough, eyes burning, as the fine dust fills your lungs. Across the city, people panic. Some rush indoors, slamming shutters, thinking wooden roofs will protect them. Others run into the streets, screaming prayers, searching for relatives. Chaos erupts as quickly as the mountain itself. Then comes the sound, the cracks, like cannon fire, as rocks are blasted skyward. Fiery fragments rain down, smashing through roofs, setting homes ablaze. You duck into a doorway as one lands nearby, exploding in sparks. Horses rear and scream, bolting through the streets. The sky darkens further, and suddenly day feels like night. Torches flicker in the gloom, casting terrified faces in orange light. Imagine standing there. The ground shudders constantly, the air thick with sulfur. You try to breathe through cloth, but it barely helps. Your lungs burn, your heart races, and every instinct screams at you to flee. But which road leads to safety when the sky itself is falling? Some head toward the sea, desperate to escape by boat. The shore is crowded, people pushing, shouting, praying for ships. But the sea is already rebelling. Waves crash violently, the water pulling back and surging forward as if Neptune himself is at war with the mountain. Boats overturn, passengers scream, and the illusion of escape crumbles. Back in the city, others climb onto rooftops, hoping for higher ground. But the ash grows heavier, piling onto tiles until roofs collapse under the weight. Screams echo through the streets as families vanish beneath rubble. You stumble through the choking haze, wondering how anyone could possibly survive. And above it all, the mountain bellows, spewing ash, fire, and death. To the Pompeians, this is incomprehensible. To you, it is a volcanic eruption, pyroclastic fountain. But no knowledge can save you now. The sky is raining death, and there is no escape plan in history that prepares you for this. So here's the question. If you were standing there, ash stinging your eyes, the earth trembling beneath your feet, and the heavens themselves collapsing, would you have the courage to run blindly into the unknown? Or would you, like so many in Pompeii, freeze, praying that the gods would protect you even as the giant tears the sky apart? The ash begins as a whisper, a light dusting that settles on rooftops and shoulders. At first, it feels almost harmless, like snow in winter. Children laugh, drawing shapes in the gray powder, and some even toss handfuls at each other as though it were a game. But within hours, the whisper becomes a scream. The flakes thicken into a storm. The sky grows darker, and every breath tastes like grit. You try to shield your face, but it is useless. The ash is fine, sharp, and relentless, coating your skin, filling your nose, burning your eyes. It scratches your throat like glass shards with every gasp. People cough violently, spitting black sludge as their lungs choke with dust. The streets, once lively with laughter, echo now with the chorus of hacking coughs and desperate prayers. Roofs collapse under the weight. At first, it is the flimsy wooden ones, giving way with a crack. Then stone structures crumble too, unable to bear the load of heavy, wet ash. Families scream as they are buried alive. Neighbors dig frantically with bare hands, and the air is filled with cries for help that fade into silence. You run past one house as the roof caves in, dust swallowing everything in a suffocating cloud. The visibility drops to almost nothing. The torchlight barely penetrates the gloom, flickering in the storm. You stumble, arms outstretched, as people push and collide in the chaos. Some cling to statues of gods, begging for mercy. Others clutch children and run blindly, their footsteps muffled by the growing carpet of ash. It is no longer a city, it is a tomb forming in real time. Here's the horrifying science. Volcanic ash is not soft like snow. It is made of tiny shards of rock and glass. Inhaling it rips your lungs apart. It mixes with moisture in the air, turning into concrete in your throat. Modern doctors call it pulmonary asphyxiation, but you do not need a diagnosis. You feel it with every breath, the panic rising as your chest tightens and your body fights for oxygen that is not there. Some try to escape by holding cloths over their mouths. Others hide indoors, thinking walls will protect them. But the ash finds every crack, every gap, seeping in, filling rooms, smothering fires, and stealing air. Inside or outside, it does not matter. The mountain claims everything. And the sounds, oh, the sounds. Horses shrieking, wood snapping, people wailing, and the constant hiss of ash falling like endless sand through an hourglass. Time itself seems to vanish, swallowed by the storm. You do not know if it is day or night anymore. The sky is gone, replaced by a ceiling of death. Imagine yourself there, ash piling on your shoulders, your lungs burning, your legs trembling as you stumble forward. You hear someone shout for you to run. But where, which direction leads to safety when every road is buried, every house collapsing, every breath a battle? And then comes the silence, thick, eerie silence as the ash muffles every sound. The city is smothered, its voice stolen. You realize Pompeii is not just dying. It is already dead, entombed in gray before the fire has even finished its work. So here's the chilling question. If you were caught in that suffocating storm, would you keep clawing for breath, fighting for a few more moments of life? Or would you stop running, surrender to the ash, and let yourself become part of Pompeii's final silence? You think the ash storm is the worst of it. You think suffocation is the cruelest way Pompeii could end. But you are wrong, because the mountain has not yet revealed its most terrifying weapon. It begins with a sound, an unholy roar that shakes the very bones of the earth. Imagine 1,000 cannons firing at once, a hurricane howling, and the ground splitting open beneath your feet. That is what it feels like when Vesuvius unleashes the pyroclastic surge. Down the mountain it comes, a wall of ash, gas, and molten rock fragments racing faster than any horse, faster than the wind itself. Temperatures soar above 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to incinerate flesh in an instant. The surge does not just move, it devours. Trees vanish in fire, buildings explode as if struck by lightning. People are frozen mid-motion, their lives ended in a heartbeat. Picture it. You are running through the streets, lungs burning from the ash, when suddenly the world glows with an eerie orange light. You turn, and you see it, a boiling cloud taller than the tallest temple, rolling toward you at terrifying speed. It looks alive like a living beast of smoke and fire, and you know in that instant there is no outrunning it. Some people drop to their knees, praying to Jupiter, Neptune, Pluto, anyone who might listen. Others scream and scatter like ants. A few rush to rooftops, hoping higher ground will save them. But the surge does not discriminate. It floods every alley, every home, every temple. Stone walls mean nothing. Doors and shutters splinter. Heat floods into lungs, cooking from the inside out. Death comes so fast that bodies are preserved in their final gestures, shielding faces, clutching loved ones, reaching for escape that never came. The science is brutal. A pyroclastic surge is a superheated avalanche of gas and ash, moving at over 100 miles per hour. There is no survival. You cannot run faster, you cannot hide deeper, you cannot fight heat that sears your body in seconds. Even modern technology offers no protection if you are in its path. In 79 AD, the people of Pompeii stood no chance. And yet, in those final moments, there is something hauntingly human. Archaeologists have found casts of bodies, parents clutching children, lovers embracing, animals curled in corners. The surge preserved not just their deaths, but their emotions. Fear, desperation, love. You realize that when the firestorm came, people were not thinking of Rome's glory or the empire's power. They were thinking of each other. And that is perhaps the only thing stronger than the mountain's fury. Now place yourself there. The roar shakes the sky. The heat scorches your skin. The cloud races toward you. Do you run until the end, fighting for every step? Do you fall to your knees and pray? Do you clutch the hand of the nearest stranger, hoping that at least you won't face the fire alone? Because here's the truth. When the pyroclastic hell arrives, survival is not measured in days or hours. It is measured in seconds. By now, Pompeii is collapsing into chaos. Ash has buried streets, pyroclastic surges have torn through neighborhoods, and the air itself has become poison. Yet still, instinct pushes you forward. The human body clings to life even when every rational thought knows the fight is lost. And so you ask yourself, how would you survive even if just for another hour? Maybe you try to run. Your sandals slip on layers of ash, each step heavy like trudging through snow. You cough, stumble, and grab at walls to keep upright. Others rush beside you, some screaming, some silent, their eyes wide with terror. One man pushes past, clutching a bag of coins as though gold will matter when the sky is on fire. Another drags a goat on a rope, shouting that sacrifices will save them. You can't decide which is crazier, the goat or the man. Perhaps you think of heading indoors. A sturdy villa might protect you, right? But the roofs are collapsing, and the ash seeps through every crack. Inside becomes a tomb faster than the streets. Some families huddle together in cellars, praying the storm will pass. Archaeologists later found them preserved, their final hope turned into eternal statues of despair. What about the sea? You imagine sprinting toward the shoreline, lungs heaving, hoping for a boat. But the sea is violent, waves thrashing like an angry god. Boats capsize, people drown, and the coast becomes another grave. The truth is cruel. Every escape route is an illusion. And yet, people try everything. Some cover their faces with cloth, wetting it in hopes of filtering the air. Others wrap themselves in blankets, thinking it might shield them from heat. A few even dig shallow pits, burying themselves in ash as though the ground might protect them. But survival here is not about clever tricks. It is about luck, and there is no luck in Pompeii tonight. You wonder, if it were you, would you keep fighting? Would you claw through the ash, run toward the mountain's shadow, search for any chance at life? Or would you stop, realizing that every breath is agony, and choose stillness instead? It is a question that has haunted historians for centuries. How do humans face the impossible? The strangest part is how familiar it feels. We tell ourselves that with enough courage or intelligence, we can escape anything. But sometimes, nature does not care. No strategy works. No heroics save the day. The struggle for survival becomes just that, a struggle, not a victory. But here's the haunting twist. Even as Pompeians fell, their lives were not erased. The ash preserved them. Their bodies turned into timeless reminders of this night. In their struggle, they left behind a message carved in silence, that life is fragile, but the desire to survive is universal. So if you were there, stumbling through the ash, heart pounding, lungs burning, would you fight for one more step, one more breath, or would you close your eyes, surrender to the storm, and let history decide the rest? Long after the ash settles, when the fires dim and silence reigns, Pompeii does not truly die, at least not in the imagination of those who lived nearby. Stories begin to spread, whispered from village to village, that the gods had punished Pompeii for its decadence, that Jupiter himself hurled fire upon a city that dared to flaunt its sins. To the Romans, disasters were never accidents. They were warnings, divine messages written in smoke and ash. Imagine wandering the ruins in the years after, standing among toppled columns and charred beams. Survivors, those few who managed to flee, return to search for loved ones or possessions. They whisper of strange sounds at night, of shadows moving in the dust. Farmers avoid the slopes of Vesuvius, claiming to see figures wandering at dusk, men frozen mid-run, women clutching infants, forever replaying their final moments. Whether ghost or memory, the mountain keeps its secrets. Legends grow. Some say Pluto, god of the underworld, opened a gate that day, reclaiming souls in a single fiery breath. Others believe Vulcan, god of fire, forged weapons in his underground forge until sparks erupted into catastrophe. Priests insist that Pompeii's sins, its brothels, its feasts, its indulgence, drew divine wrath. Archaeologists may point to tectonics and chemistry, but myths point to morality. Which is scarier, a world ruled by chance, or one judged by gods who punish without mercy? Now, place yourself there in the aftermath. You walk through streets coated in gray, silence pressing against your ears. Then a sudden crunch behind you. Footsteps, you turn, but no one is there. The hairs on your neck rise. In the doorway of a ruined house, you think you see movement, the faint outline of someone shielding their face. A trick of the light, or the imprint of a soul refusing to leave. You quicken your pace, but the feeling does not fade. Pompeii is empty, but you never feel alone. Even today, visitors to the ruins tell stories. Strange chills while standing in ancient villas. Whispering winds in the amphitheater that sound almost like cheers. A sense of being watched near the plaster casts of victims, their bodies frozen in terror. Science says it is psychology, the weight of history pressing down on the mind. But another part of you wonders, if thousands of lives ended in an instant, does something linger in the air? And then there are the curses. A legend claims that those who steal artifacts from Pompeii invite misfortune. Tourists who pocketed a tile or fragment of pottery have later written letters of apology, mailing the items back, begging forgiveness after illness or tragedy struck their lives. Coincidence, perhaps, or maybe the dead of Pompeii still guard their city, punishing those who disturb their rest. So, if you were there walking through Pompeii not in life but in death, would you fear the gods, the ghosts, or your own imagination? Would you believe the mountain was cursed ground? Or simply haunted by the weight of memory? One thing is certain, Pompeii is not silent. Its voices still whisper through the ash, if you dare to listen. When archaeologists first uncovered Pompeii, they expected ruins. Broken walls, shattered streets, the remains of a city long gone. What they did not expect were the people. Frozen in time, their final moments captured in ash. These plaster casts, formed by pouring liquid plaster into voids left behind by decayed bodies, revealed expressions so human, so immediate, that even centuries later you feel like you are intruding on a private tragedy. Here is the brutal truth. Almost no one survived Pompeii because the science of the eruption made survival impossible. Volcanic ash as fine as glass filled the lungs of anyone who tried to breathe. Temperatures soared so high that flesh burned instantly. The pyroclastic surges moved faster than a human could ever run, sweeping through streets with unstoppable force. Death was not drawn out, it was mercilessly swift. Modern volcanologists classify Vesuvius's eruption as Plinian, named after Pliny the Younger, who watched from across the bay and wrote an eyewitness account. He described the sky filled with a cloud of unusual size and appearance, shaped like a pine tree, rising high before spreading wide. He saw darkness fall, lightning flicker through the cloud, and the sea retreat and roar back with terrifying force. His words remain one of history's most chilling records, because they confirm that what happened to Pompeii was not just a disaster. It was a perfect storm of volcanic violence. Consider the timeline. Around midday, the first explosion blasted ash and pumice into the sky. For hours, Pompeii was pelted with falling rock, burying streets in debris. Roofs collapsed under the weight, killing families who sought shelter inside. By night, the city was already suffocating. But worse was to come. In the early hours of the next morning, the pyroclastic surges roared down the mountain, obliterating everything in their path. Anyone still alive had no chance. The casts tell the story. One shows a man covering his face, hands raised as if to shield from the storm. Another shows a mother curled around her child. A dog, chained in a courtyard, twisted in agony. These are not statues. They are echoes of real lives, cut short in an instant. And they remind us that nature does not discriminate. Rich or poor, slave or master, man or beast, all met the same fate. Science also reveals why Pompeii was preserved so eerily well. The ash sealed the city, creating an oxygen-poor environment that prevented decay. Frescoes remained vivid, bread loaves carbonized in ovens. Even graffiti etched into walls survived. It is as though the eruption pressed pause on time, freezing an entire civilization in its last breath. For historians, it is a gift. For the people who lived there, it was a curse. And here is the cruel irony. The same eruption that destroyed Pompeii also immortalized it. Without that storm of ash and fire, we would never know so much about Roman daily life. The tragedy gave us knowledge, but at a cost too high to imagine. So ask yourself, if you stood there watching ash rain down, would you find comfort knowing your world might one day teach others? Or would that thought be meaningless when your lungs filled with fire and your city turned to stone around you? History is not just about the past. It is a mirror, and Pompeii is one of the clearest reflections we have ever been given. When you walk through its ruins today, you are not only stepping into an ancient city, you are stepping into a warning carved in stone and ash. A warning about human fragility, about arrogance, and about the eternal struggle between civilization and nature. Pompeii was not a poor city. It was rich, thriving, and confident. Its citizens had art, commerce, leisure, and luxury. They believed their empire eternal, their gods protective, their lives secure. And yet, in less than 2 days, everything vanished. The message is obvious, no matter how advanced. How wealthy, how powerful we become, nature does not negotiate. It does not bargain with emperors, nor does it care about borders, armies, or wealth. The earth moves, the mountain erupts, and humanity is reminded that we are guests, not masters. For centuries, people interpreted Pompeii's fall as divine punishment. They saw its brothels, its feasts, its indulgences, and decided that the gods had judged the city. Today, science offers another perspective. It was geology, not morality, that ended Pompeii. But the lesson is the same: hubris, the belief that nothing can touch us, is always dangerous. The Romans thought the tremors were harmless quirks. They stayed, they laughed, they lived, and then they died, because denial is often deadlier than the disaster itself. There is also a lesson in memory. The very thing that destroyed Pompeii preserved it. Because of the ash, we know how Romans ate, how they decorated their homes, even what they wrote on their walls. Without the eruption, Pompeii would be another forgotten town. With it, it became immortal. It reminds us that tragedy can leave behind knowledge, that destruction can paradoxically become preservation. But would you trade thousands of lives for lessons carved in stone? That is the uncomfortable price of history. Think of today. We build cities on coasts threatened by hurricanes, on rivers that flood, on plains that quake, near volcanoes that still breathe fire. We assure ourselves that technology will save us, that warnings will be enough, that we are different from the people of Pompeii. But are we? When the sirens wail, when the sky darkens, when the earth shakes, do we flee, or do we convince ourselves it is nothing, the same way Pompeii once did? The ruins whisper a challenge. Do not mistake progress for invincibility. Do not confuse comfort with safety, and never assume that tomorrow is promised. The people of Pompeii went to bed one night believing in their future. By morning, there was no future left. So here's the reflection for you. If Pompeii teaches us anything, it is that life is fragile, civilizations are temporary, and the earth will always have the last word. The question is not whether disasters will come. They always do. The question is, will we listen, or will we, like Pompeii, laugh off the warnings until the ash begins to fall? The story of Pompeii is not just about death. It is also about memory, about the way the past reaches out across centuries to remind us of our place in the world. Tonight, as you have walked through its markets, its villas, its baths, and finally its fiery destruction, you have lived a day that no one could survive. And yet, in telling this story, we bring Pompeii back to life, not as ruins, but as a warning, a lesson, and a haunting echo of humanity. Imagine yourself standing among the ruins today. Tourists shuffle past, snapping photos, whispering about the plaster casts. The sun shines on the same stones that once shook beneath terrified feet. The colors of frescoes still glow, faint but stubborn, as though the city refuses to fade entirely. You bend down, trace your fingers along a mosaic floor, and realize these were not myths, not legends, but real people. People who laughed, who loved, who believed in tomorrow, just as you do. And yet, tomorrow never came for them. That is the truth that lingers like ash in the air. Life is fragile, and the ground we walk on is never as solid as it seems. The citizens of Pompeii did not know the science. They did not see the danger, but in their laughter and their fear, they are mirrors of us. We too build cities, throw feasts, chase pleasures, and ignore warnings. Pompeii is not ancient history. It is a reflection of every society that believes itself untouchable. So what should you take from this night's story? Perhaps it is gratitude for the ordinary moments, the laughter at dinner tables, the comfort of home. Perhaps it is humility to remember that the earth is older, stronger, and more relentless than we can ever be. Or perhaps it is simply awe, knowing that even in destruction, Pompeii speaks to us still, whispering from beneath layers of stone and silence. Now, before we close, take a breath. Let the dust settle in your imagination. Let the noise of collapsing walls fade into quiet. Picture Pompeii not in its death, but in its life, children playing, wine flowing, music drifting across courtyards. Hold that image because that, too, is part of its story. The city was not only about how it ended, but also about how it lived. And with that, our journey through Pompeii comes to an end. Thank you for staying with me, for walking through ash and fire with me tonight. If you felt the chill of history, if you learned something new, if you want to keep traveling through time together, do not forget to like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Here's my question for you: if you had the chance to visit another lost civilization for one day, knowing you could not survive there either, which would you choose? Atlantis, the Mayan cities, or something else entirely? Let me know. Because history is never really gone, as long as we keep listening to its stories. Good night, and may your dreams be lighter than the ash of Pompeii.